Right, in this video, we'll quickly do the coding to register a new user in Backendless. So that's basically in your register activity. So remember that we gave IDs. So let's just link up those IDs quickly. So we've got ET name, ET email or ET mail, ET password, ET re-enter, and then the button. So let's set up these components quickly. So we've got 4 edit texts. So in the register activity, let's quickly set up those 4 edit texts. So I'm going to have edit text. The first one was ET name, we had an ET mail, we had an ET password, and we had also ET re-enter. So those are the 4 edit texts. And if we go back, we also had a button and we called it btn register. So I'm going to set up the button quickly, btn register. Okay, so let's link them up quickly in coding. So we'll say ET name equals find the view by its ID, r.id.etName. We have an ET mail one equals find the view by its ID. It's called ET mail. We also have ET password, which should be r.id.etPassword. Then we also have ET re-enter, should be find the view by its ID, and it should be ET re-enter. Okay, so now we've logged, or we basically linked all of the components. So now if the user then types any one of his, or let's say all of his values, and he clicks on register, we must first make sure that he actually entered anything there. So for the button basically that gets clicked, we call that one, okay, so we should still set up the button. btn register should be find view by ID, r.id.btn register. Okay, so now for the button, we're going to say set the on-click listener, new on-click listener, and this is now the on-click listener for the button. Okay, so now if the button gets clicked, we want to go and check that these edit texts all have values in them. So I'm going to say if etname.getText.toString.isEmpty. If it's empty, or etmail, which is the mail address, .getText.toString.isEmpty. So if that one is empty, or this one is empty, or the other one, etPassword.getText.toString.isEmpty. And for the last or, I'm going to go to the new line, and that will be ET re-enter.getText.toString.isEmpty. So if any one of these are empty, we will need to tell the user, please enter all details. Okay, now the else part will be if now we have data for all of those edit texts. The second thing that we want to check now in your register is if the user typed the password and the retype password, if those two are the same. So we can check here if etPassword.getText.toString.equals etReenter.getText.toString. So if those two are the same, then we can start with whatever we want to do to register the user. The else part will be they are not the same, and then we will just display to the user again, please make sure that your password and retype password is the same. Right, so just a simple message to the user. So basically what we'll do now is in this part here, if we know that nothing is empty because we're testing there, if this one is empty, or this one, or this one, or that one, please enter all details. So if we get to the else part, it means that everything is filled out, and then we can test if the two passwords are the same. If they are, then we will register the new user. If it's not the same, we will make sure that he will retype them and get them the same. Right, so now in this if statement, we need to get the different details from the user. So I'm going to start off with the user's name. So I'm going to say string name equals etname.getText.toString. Maybe use the trim method also. You can also use the trim method when you're testing here. So let's just try and do that also. Trim it. And after that one, also just add the trim method there. So remember what the trim method does. It basically takes away any leading or trailing white space so that you make sure that the user did not accidentally click on a space bar or whatever, and now you can't test properly. So I'm getting the name field, and then we're going to ask the user for his email. So we're going to say etmail.getText. .toString, and we can trim it again, because normally the autocomplete of your keyboards that you get autocompletes your mail or remember your mail, and after the mail they add a space, and then you can have a problem if you do not use the trim method. So then we've got the name, we've got the email. The last thing we need here is the password. So the password will be etpassword.getText.toString.trim again. Okay, so now we've got the name, the email, and the password of the guy that we want to register. And now this is the part where we actually send data to Backendless. So we're going to say Backendless user, create a new user, and we can call it what we like, equals new Backendless user. So that creates a new Backendless user. So now to that user, we're going to set the email property to be email. Now, if you go online quickly to your database, now this is our contacts application, and we quickly go to data, then you can go to the bottom and you can see there's your users table. Now for the user, we need in email, if you do not have the name property there, normally it's added there, but remember you can add your own column. So if you go to schema, you can remove that name property there, or you can add it. So if you want to add a new column, you will go and say new, and then just type name, string, and the default value if you want. So it's very easy to create a new column that you can add data for. So if you wanted the name and the surname and the address of a new user, you can go into schema and say new, and you can add your columns there. Just remember that it's case sensitive, so if it's called name here, we must also refer to name inside of the coding. So let's go back to Android Studio. So the set mail and also the user.setPassword is very important that you use those two. So then I'm going to just pass in the password. So if I use the set password method, it encrypts this password and then save it to Backendless. Now for any other field that you want to save, like for example, you can see there's a set password and a set email, but obviously if you choose there must be a name, there won't be a set name. So you're going to say set property, and you can see for the property they need a key and a value pair. So basically you're going to give your data a name, and that will be the name of the column where you want to save it. And if I quickly have a look at the name of my columns here in my users table, you see I've got a name column, and exactly that same spelling is what we need. So I'm going to say name, that's the column where I want to save it, and then the value is the second argument that you want to save into that column, and that will be this specific name. Okay, so you can have as many set properties here as you like, where your first argument will, as a string, be the name of your column, and your second argument, the value for that column. Right, so now the next part is to actually take and register this new user in Backendless. And for that, we need to now start showing our progress bar. So I'm going to say show the progress for the progress bar, and then we go into Backendless. So we're going to use Backendless.userService.register. And you can see there's two. This one is for Java, this one is for Android. So the first one for Java is not using it asynchronously, but in Android for the phone, we need to go asynchronously. So we're going to use the second one there. So the first one is, what is the Backendless user that you want to save? It's this one that we created that we called user. And the second one, you're just going to say new A, and you can click it from the link there, async callback. Now, how this works is it will go now into Backendless to the user service and register this new user that we defined here. But remember, it could find that this user already exists. So then it comes back after it's done. It will either come back into handle response, or it will go into handle fault. So if there's a fault, for example, this user already exists, it will go into handle fault, and you can print out the message of the fault. So basically what we'll do here is to just go and say toast, and we can say error, and then just print out this fault object. So we're going to say fault, dot get message, and that gets me the exception message what occurred. So it could tell me, you know, this guy already exists, or whatever the case may be. Okay, so that will go into the handle fault. So remember then, somewhere we should stop this progress from showing. So what we need to do then is, if there's a fault, obviously we don't want to have that progress showing anymore, so we'll set that to false there if there's a fault. But also, when it's done in the background and everything went fine, we will also set the show progress to false so that we see the activity again. But now there's a question, should you have this activity open after the user registers? So if it's registered successfully, we want to actually take him directly to the login activity so that he can log in. So let's do that. So we will set the show progress to false, or you can actually leave it because we're going back, but we're closing this. So we can set it to false, and then what we'll do is, because we came from the login activity to this one to register, we will then, if we go back, we can actually just close this register activity. So we will say register dot this dot finish, and that will close down this activity, and it will take you to the previous activity. And then maybe just before that, we can show a toast also to the user successfully registered, so that the user will know what is going on. Right, and that's basically how you register a new user. Now for us to test this out, we will need to go to the login activity quickly. And let's just go to, I'm going to close down buttons. Let's go to the login activity and set up all these components quickly. So this one was called etMail, and that one is etPassword. So in the login activity, let's just go and set up the two edit text there. So we're going to say etMail, and we had etPassword. And we also had two buttons there. So I'm going to say button btn login, and we had the btn register. So that's basically just looking at these two buttons. We called them btn login and btn register. And then we have also a TV reset. So I'm going to say text view there, and this one will be called TV reset. Right, so let's just quickly set up those components. Seen I've set the login here to show the progress, so let's just remove that. So let's set up those components quickly. etMail would be find the view by its ID, r.id.etMail. Just connecting up these components. etPassword will be find view by its ID, r.id.etPassword. Right, and then we've got two buttons, btn login, find the view by its ID, r.id.btn login, and then we also have btn register equals find the view by its ID, r.id.btn register. And now all the components except for the text view setup. So let's set up the text view as well, r.id.tv reset. Right, so now all the components are set up, and three of them we want to act as buttons. We want to have this one as a button, that one as a button, and we also want to have this text view basically do the same thing as a button. So we will say btn login.setOnClickListener new on, and then we will say btn register.setOnClickListener new on ClickListener. There we go. And then the same for TV reset. We want to set an on click listener, new on click listener. Okay, so there's basically everything is set up for the login activity then also. But what we want to test for this video is if we can register a new user. So in the login activity, when the user then clicks on register there, we want to take him to the register activity. So there's btn register. So we will just say start an activity, and then a new intent. And what we'll have there is first the login activity, login.this, and then the second argument where we want to go, and that will be register.class. Okay, so let's quickly test out this application now. So if we quickly go to the website, you can see that even if I refresh my tables there, in my users table, I have absolutely nothing now. So we'll see if we can register a new user here. Let's go back to Android Studio and get that emulator. See how the app runs. Right, so there's our login activity, and we want to click on register. Takes me to this page. Let me say my name is, it allows me to type there. Let's say Chuck, and my email address will be, or just say chuck@gmail.com. Enter the password 12345, 12345, and then I'm going to register. And you can see as soon as I click on register, it removes my layout, and now it takes me back to the login activity. So you notice that when we clicked on the register part at the bottom, we still saw the register activity. So it's up to you whether you want to go into this register and show the progress or set the progress to false here or not, because we're in any case going to close down. So it's not really necessary to set it to false there. And then maybe that screen will look a bit better. So let's go to Backendless and refresh this table. And now we should see a new user that's created, chuck@gmail.com. And the name is Chuck, and the password was set. So yes, we can create a new user online. So that's it for this video. This is how you create a new user. So in the next video, we'll see how we can log in that user and how we can reset the password for this user.